Welcome to Bitcoin Magazine Live, my friends. It's going to be just me and Chris today. Q is out. He's fine, but he wasn't able to make it. So we're going to be diving into it. There is a lot to talk about. It is Tuesday, November 15th, and we're going to be going through everything that is happening in the space today. There's contagion, there's madness, there's total insanity. We're going to tell you all about it. And then in 30 minutes, I will be interviewing none other than Stella Assange, wife of Julian Assange, who has been unfairly prosecuted for doing everything that he can to set us free and help us understand everything that's happening in the world today with regard to privacy. Chris, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Things are kind of crazy. I think that's an understatement, but I'm excited to get into it. Let's get after it.
Let's do it. So the first story we're going to take you through today during News and Notes, again on this November 15th, Tuesday, 2022, is this insane fluff piece that was put out by the New York Times, essentially trying to just make Sam Bankman-Fried seem like a poor, helpless, altruistic investor who was just made some minor mistakes and was not responsible for the dissolution of 1 million Americans' funds. It's absolute garbage. It is unconscionable. I wanted to also highlight, there's a bit in the interview where I'm just going to read directly. So shortly before the interview, Mr. Bankman-Fried posted a cryptic tweet, the word "what." Then he tweeted the letter H, asked to explain. Mr. Bankman-Fried said he planned to post the letter A and then the letter P. It's going to be more than one word. He said, "I'm making it up as I go." They actually had that in the story. This story didn't go into any of the confirmed at this point nefarious shit that's been going on. It, as I said, presented him as a pure, hapless person who just was trying to do his best. There are quotes in the story like, from him, "You would have thought that I'd be getting no sleep right now, and instead, I'm getting some." Things like, "He has also found other ways to occupy his time in recent days, playing the video game Storybook Brawl, though less than he usually does," he said. "It helps me unwind a bit. It clears my mind." It's just ridiculous that they're posting this story, that they actually took the time to write about it. The story does not mention any of the words like, fraud, stealing. It does not talk about any of the actual issues that are going on in depth, and it's absolute horseshit. Chris, what are your thoughts?
It's actually very frustrating. Not only is it like they had this piece on him come out, very much a fluff piece, softball questions and all this, but let's be honest, Alexei Pertsev is the open source developer for Tornado Cash. I know it's not for Bitcoin, it was for another chain. We don't need to go into that, but literally he wrote free and open source code and was thrown in jail. He is still in jail waiting for the determination end of this month. And SBF's just out there I lost a bunch of people money. So one guy wrote free and open source code that people could use or not use or do whatever they want. This dude literally committed fraud in the tune of millions, if not billions of dollars once all the dust is settled. And he's just like, "Yeah, I'm playing video games. I'm sleeping at night. I'm fine." A dude's been in jail for almost 3 months or over 3 months at this point. And, it's ridiculous. I don't know. I hate to say there's a two-tier justice system or a miscarriage of justice, but that's the way it reads to me. And it's just completely unfair and ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, this was clearly a piece that was bought and paid for by a PR campaign, or maybe the Democratic Party, or someone who has a vested interest in Sam Bankman-Fried getting off scot-free because it will embarrass them if he serves justice. It's just so out of touch. And it's really sad that that this is how far the New York Times has fallen.
Yeah, and I'll just add one more thing. It definitely shows money corrupts, or especially if corruption of money is a horrible thing, because that $40 billion plus that he gave to multiple political campaigns, mainly the majority of it to the Democratic Party, definitely buys you favors in DC, and especially when you're the darling of Silicon Valley and the Washington DC area, because you're stuffing their coffers and allowing them to win elections. It buys you some favors, which is it's ridiculous. Yeah, so I'm just leave it at that. But getting into it all, there is some light at the end of the tunnel. Bitcoin, not crypto. What do I mean by this? Bitcoin has been outpacing crypto in Google searches over the last couple of months. Let me pull up the graphic real quick. But P, before I do so, what are your thoughts on that? Good, bad, indifferent? People confused? People learning about Bitcoin finally?
No, I think it's fucking awesome. Specifically, as you said, searches for, I think, as you said, buying Bitcoin are massively outpaying buying crypto. The reality is that the shitcoin space, in my opinion, is not going to go away. But in the long term, there's always going to be people who are trying to grift people who are willing to be grifted, so to speak. But it is incredibly bullish and incredibly optimistic to me that people are starting to, at least right now, understand that Bitcoin is fundamentally different than the crypto space. There's Bitcoin, which is sound money, is designed to be censorship resistant, decentralized, cryptographically secure. And then there's everything else. And those everything else, as we talk about a lot, I'm sorry to repeat myself, but it bears repeating. Those are, I think 99.9% of them are scams that are desperate to align themselves with Bitcoin because Bitcoin has these properties, and then convince people to buy those things so that they can take those people's Bitcoin and put it into their own pockets. But what do you think, Chris?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. And I think, Bitcoin is the victor. Bitcoin is the apex predator, taking one from Michael Saylor's quote. And I think in the long run, this is inevitable. Speaking of things getting dicey, though, P, and speaking of crypto, ironically or not ironically, crypto.com, things do not look great there. Give us the breakdown.
Absolutely hilarious. So, there's the I will never stop being amused about the people losing their absolute shit when they changed the name of what was the Staples Center. Everybody was like, my Staples, they were my thing. It was my, I grew up with the Staples Center. And it's like, it's just another fucking brand. Anyway, crypto.com.
You don't need to subtweet Q here. I mean, he's not even here to defend himself about the Staples Center. He loves that beloved place.
But it's just the name. Anyway, the point is, crypto.com, as we've talked about, put their name on the fucking Staples Center. It was ridiculous and insane. They are in the process of trying to offload that sponsorship because, of course, it cost a shit ton of money. But more specifically, they are going through the classic playbook right now that we've seen every brokerage/exchange in the space go through over the last several weeks, where something crazy happens, then there's issues with withdrawals, and then their CEO puts out a very bold statement saying, hey, oops, I just spilled my water everywhere, says, hey, don't even worry. We're totally good. We're totally solvent. Just keep your money with us. You're fine. Specifically, the CEO said that their balance sheet is strong and that they are not in trouble. They also, hilariously, accidentally sent $400 million worth of Ethereum to another exchange. But then they were like, don't even trip, dog. We just asked for it back and they sent it back to us. There is no way this was an accident. Insiders are saying that they have multiple procedures in place, extensive systems where there are multiple signatories or signatures required from private keys. There's no way they could have just accidentally sent this much ETH. And if they did, who the fuck would send it back? Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that they're trying to protect their own interest. And what I mean by that is they're trying to send Bitcoin to other exchanges. And I know CZ has been pretty vocal with being like, oh, this proof of reserves concept. And this is good. But to exactly, proof of reserves is just a timestamp in a specific moment in time. If you take a flash loan of being like, look, we're all good, but then you just pay it back immediately or send it back to them minus fees and whatever they charge you, yeah, we were good at this moment, and then all of a sudden the next day we're insolvent. What the hell happened? Even proof of reserves of even the best Bitcoin only exchanges, it's only a timestamp in time. Like I was reiterating, oh, we were good at this moment, and then all of a sudden we forgot the private keys, or our file corrupted, or our servers crashed, or whatever happened. We can no longer recover the funds. They are now insolvent. So I think it's, I know this push for proof of reserves is a way to protect people. While I think it's a step in the right direction, it's kind of, it's a nothing burger, basically. I don't know. That's just me.
Could not agree more. But let's talk about CZ. What's he up to these days?
I just mentioned him. So good guy, CZ. So to quote tweet from him, to reduce further cascading negative effects of FTX, Binance is forming an industry recovery fund to help protect projects who are otherwise strong but in liquidity crisis. More details to come soon. Isn't this exactly what FTX was doing? He is, I mean, we always talk about show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome. He is protecting his own bags and his own interest. He is trying to prop up the industry in a letter that he said to his employees not too long ago when all of this contagion was going on about a week and a half ago with FTX, when they were thinking of buying the exchange. And things were in a grim situation. He's like, this should not be something we celebrate. This hurts our industry. What he really means is we're losing a fuck ton of money because they're going out of business and people don't trust crypto, which they shouldn't. Bitcoin only and self-custody it yourself. Run your own node. I'm talking about you, Q. I will call you out here, even though you're not allowed to defend yourself. But yeah, I guess, P, anything else you want to add to what I just said there?
No, man. I mean, not your keys, not your fucking coins. Like, this is just posturing. You know, CZ's been doing these massive Twitter spaces, with 20,000 people, 30,000 people. And as we talked about yesterday, trying to reassure the market that, everything is okay. He is desperately trying to present the cryptocurrency market as a responsible and, mature market that does not need to be heavily regulated. Because, of course, the powers that be are going to use this as an opportunity in order to whip up massive regulation because they are terrified of Bitcoin. They are terrified of people not being under the yoke of their, financial whip. Wrong terms, but you get the idea. And he's trying to counteract that. He is trying to do this to basically say, like, we don't need regulation. We're good. We talked about this yesterday again, but he and Vitalik apparently have been talking about like implementing some kind of proof of reserve system. Again, this is to sort of stem this tide of massive regulation that is they're going to attempt to push through. So we all have to fight that. We all have to be there. I, support CZ in trying to do that because it provides cover fire for Bitcoin. But the real answer is, of course, hold your own keys. Use Bitcoin privately, understand the tools, because you can't rely on anybody else, and you shouldn't have to. On to our next story. There are a lot of people that very, very publicly supported SBF. A lot of people have, because he paid them a fuck ton of money, including the Clintons, including Giselle, including a ton of other, famous
Tom
people.
Brady, Steph Curry, like... Yeah. The MLB, all their umpires had it on their jerseys all season long this year.
Exactly. There are a lot of people who are doing everything they possibly can as quickly as they can to distance themselves from Sam Bankman-Fried and from FTX because they are looking like absolute idiots. What does that mean in practice? One of the things that's happening is that Sam Bankman-Fried is essentially being scrubbed from the internet. All associations with FTX and him specifically are being, categorically kind of taken down, removed. People are trying to remove archives of that information because they don't want the history to show what actually happened. They're trying to shove it deep into the memory hole so that the collective forgets about it. We have to prevent this. There are a lot of people who have archived all of Sam Bankman-Fried's tweets, who are archiving all the tweets of the people that were associated with him, but it is actively happening right now. Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum has scrubbed the entire page about FTX because, of course, Sam Bankman-Fried's famous thing is, effective altruism, which is garbage, but be ready, watch for it. See how quickly people stop mentioning his name because they're doing so as rapidly as they can.
Yeah, I completely agree. Moving on, talking more FTX. FTX is finally being investigated. So the Manhattan U.S. Attorney's Office has begun a probe. So they are probing into it. It's already been a week and a half, and with the bankruptcy thing, I know that he stepped down as CEO. We talked about John Ray stepping up, who was famously the Enron CEO after they went through their bankruptcy proceedings. He was the one that took over in light of all of that.
He's the Axeman.
Yeah, he's finally being investigated. I don't know what that means. It looks like it's pretty clear Dylan LeClaire is doing, and the Bitcoin Magazine Pro team's doing an excellent job describing basically the fraudulent practices that they were doing. It would be very interesting if we got referenced in the investigation, like Bitcoin Magazine as a whole. Not that we have ties to it, but just like the reporting that we're doing, or even just they take a poll of Twitter. Who was it recently? One of the cases that they were referencing like tweets and stuff. It's very funny that like memes become reality, that in court cases, they're now referencing tweets and memes and all that. But very, very interesting. Like I said, was saying before, Alexei Pertsev is in jail and SBF is not. And every day that happens, that's a miscarriage of justice. I mean, even you could look at Ross Ulbricht. He was having, a free and open exchange, or he was basically operating a web exchange or an exchange of goods and services, and he was not committing fraud per se. They were trying to ding him on wire fraud or not paying taxes, but SBF was quite literally performing fraud and all of that. And they went after him, or they have not gone after SBF yet. So it's a real bummer, but hopefully something will come up of this.
I want to let everybody know there's some breaking story. BlockFi is apparently preparing for potential bankruptcy as a crypto contagion spreads. The Wall Street Journal reports that BlockFi financially entangled with the now bankrupt FTX, is planning to lay off workers and exploring a bankruptcy filing itself. People familiar with the situation say. We started this broadcast talking about crypto.com. BlockFi has raised its hand. They're ready to be next.
Well, P, I mean, we actually did have a story on the docket about BlockFi. If you want to hit this up first, and then we'll go back. Give it to me straight. What's going on? There was a bet that went on between BlockFi CEO and some infamous person on Twitter.
Yes, absolutely. So if you're new to the space, within the last 6 months or so, you may not have experienced the insanity, the madness, the genius that is American Hodl. Now, he is someone who, in the bear market of 2017 and before, really was there just screaming at everybody, getting people to buy into Bitcoin. He has created some incredible memes. And he, sort of took a step back, removed himself from Twitter. He's like, I got to focus on, how I can improve the space, how I can, invest in companies, bring my knowledge to bear. And of course, this was a very sad thing for all of us who enjoyed immensely all of his shit posting. But my friends, he's back. He came back for one very specific reason, which is that the CEO of BlockFi owes him a fuck ton of Bitcoin. How much specifically, Chris?
He owes him 2 Bitcoin. So the deal was, American Hodl was trying to go, hey, you owe me 1 Bitcoin if you guys go insolvent in 37 years. I don't know why they picked 37 years, but Zach was like, yo, dude, that's way too long. And, granted, 37 years is a long time to run a business. He's like, let's make it 10, but I'll give you 2-to-1 odds. Meaning that if BlockFi is, and he said, using Zach Prince's words, former CEO of BlockFi, if BlockFi is still operational with perfect performance for clients, I win 1 Bitcoin. If we shut down or lose client funds, you win 2 Bitcoin, meaning talking to American Hodl. So American Hodl was like, I'm back, bitch. I'm here to collect. It's basically something along the lines when he came back to Twitter.
I think it's fair to say, and tell me if you disagree, that if Zach Prince doesn't follow through with this, right? Because it's very clear there was a very respectful back and forth over Twitter. Everybody kept the receipts. There's no question. The terms of the agreement were established. Those terms have come to pass.
Yeah.
If Zach Prince does not make good on this bet, I think it's fair to say that not only is he a piece of shit, but he should never be taken seriously again. The way he can, save his reputation, absolve himself, not of all the other crimes and the fuckery, but of, demonstrate that he is a respectable, responsible human being in this space, is to pay American Hodl what you owe him. I challenge you, sir. Make good on your bet. Come on to this show. Talk to us about it. We would love to have you and American Hodl officially, make this happen. We'll have you remotely shake hands and high five, and then, you'll be set. You'll be solid. You'll have done what you said you were going to do.
I definitely do think it was a gentleman's agreement. In fairness, American Hodl always pays his debts. I don't know if he's like the Lannisters or not, but there was 2 infamous bets that I know of with Peter McCormack. So one was they were betting on the outcome of the U.S. presidential election in 2020 with if Trump was going to win or Biden was going to win. Hodl was taking Trump. Peter was taking Biden. It's a very close race, but at the end of the day, when all of the votes were counted, it said that Biden was there. Rumble, don't come yelling at me. I know that what you guys are already going to say about the election, but as of right now, Biden is the president. So he owed half a Bitcoin to Peter. In order to try and resalvage his half a Bitcoin that he lost, American Hodl doubled down and was like, hey, I'm going to bet you another half Bitcoin, Peter. that if Bitcoin hit 250K by December 31st of 2021, Peter would owe him half a Bitcoin back. He also lost that bet, meaning the peak of Bitcoin only hit about 69K Bitcoin. So,
Nice.
I mean, American Hodl lost 2/2 of a Bitcoin or a whole Bitcoin. So I guess he is now getting a whole Bitcoin back. So I guess he's made whole on the degenerate bets that he made. That is, of course, if Zach pays him. It was also cool that Hodl was saying that the other Bitcoin, so he was going to win two. One of them, he was going to go, so one Bitcoin for himself, one Bitcoin he was going to give back to some of the people that were basically rugged by FTX. He was kind of clarifying that, hey, I was going to try and help out people that took their money off FTX and then was like, oh, I'm putting in BlockFi and I'll be fine. Ultimately, that collapsed as well. And he feels bad and really hopes that he can help people that were definitely harmed by this. He did caveat and say, if you've been in the industry a while and you got rugged on BlockFi, he has no sympathy for you. So a lot of the people from the 2020 Bitcoin camp, maybe he won't help out, but I think that is very generous of him to do that if the bet does come true.
Yeah, it gets a little bit more interesting than that, which is that Peter McCormack, famed technologically illiterate person, actually, it was a 2 of 3 multi-sig. And Peter McCormack, he was sent the information that he needed to keep in order to be able to collect on this bet, and he immediately lost it. And so it actually required American Hodl and I think
Ben the Carman. I think it was Ben the Carman.
No, I think it was someone from Unchained Capital.
Oh,
who was the other signatory? Because they had a DLC.
Ryan Geiger? No.
Maybe. Anyway, the point is, not only did American Hodl lose this bet, but he actually could have been like, you lost your fucking keys, go fuck yourself. What he did instead is they sat down live on Peter McCormack's show, and he actually had to like pony up his own private keys. That's to say, American Hodl had to be like, all right, you lost this stuff, but I'm a good man, so I'm gonna make you whole. And he did. Props to him. But let's keep going. We talked enough about American Hodl. His head's going to explode. What else we got?
Jack Dorsey is building in a bear market. What do I mean by that? Jack Dorsey tweets, Bitcoin hardware made in Austin, obviously referring to Austin, Texas. We are making our Bitcoin wallet in Texas. Check out the latest post if you want to learn more about how we chose our manufacturing partner. Basically, they talk about in this post, it was one of his employees from Block or Spiral or whatever. I forget all the renamings of the company now. But they talk about they are getting in business with a business partner and they're beginning the QA/QC process for building a hardware wallet. There's kind of like 3 sides of the triangle or 3 points of the triangle when you think about it. When you're trying to make something, you can either make it very cheaply, very quickly, or very good or like excellent, I guess, manufacturing. You can only pick 2 out of 3. So they're going for more of the security and excellence route. I do not think this is going to be a very quick process. They have been doing an awesome job. I will give them props where props are due at posting all of their blog posts or basically just keeping it very open source. That was part of the point of like TBD, the company that he has, along with Spiral and Block. They're trying to open source the world basically. And I think they're doing an awesome job with this. I think that they're trying to even compete with like Seed Signer. I know Seed Signer's price has gone up a little bit with Raspberry Pi Zeros getting way more expensive. It's about $80 if you buy it from them. You can part it off the shelf for about $60. But I really think Jack Dorsey's trying to push to, you know, the sub $50 hardware wallet to try and make it more accessible for places like Africa, South America, India, places that are, I hate to say, a much poorer or emerging markets or nations. So I give props to Jack Dorsey where props are due, and I hope they're very successful in it. The more competition, the better, and I think it's very noble what they're doing.
Absolutely. I also just want to say that one of the things that's really interesting about the work that they're doing is they are laser focused on bringing secure Bitcoin storage and self-custody to as many people as possible, as rapidly as possible. What do I mean by that? They are focused on how to get, you know, your grandma, my grandma, a grandma in, you know, sub-Saharan Africa, a system that allows them to safely custody their Bitcoin. And they're willing to push back on the public dogma that is associated with Bitcoin in order to do that. So, you know, a lot of people really don't like that. Basically, it's a 2 of 3 multi-sig where you have one of the sets of private keys on your phone because the most people in the world don't actually have access to a personal computer. They use their phones instead. And so, it's on a phone. Then you have one of the keys is kept on their server. And then they also have this hardware device, which you mentioned, which is an NFC, signing device. And a lot of people were like, what? No, that's bullshit. Like, you shouldn't be using NFC, which is an insecure system, in order to basically sign these transactions. But the reality is, when you combine those with these other, two potential signatories in a 2 or 3 multi-sig, you actually increase the security overall. And so they're willing to kind of buck trends in order to create systems that make trade-offs for sure in terms of security, but ultimately are better than people having their Bitcoin on an exchange, having their Bitcoin in a system where they get rugged and there's no recourse. So it's good stuff.
Definitely.
Yep. I also want to talk about Snowden. He has been very publicly pro Bitcoin lately, which is amazing to see. On Bitcoin White Paper Day, he was posting the white paper talking about Bitcoin, promoting Bitcoin. It was fantastic to see. We talked about it then. We're talking about it now. And he recently tweeted that specifically, he said, "There's still a lot of trouble ahead, but for the first time in a while, I'm starting to feel the itch to scale back in to Bitcoin." I think it's great to see. He is a major public figure, and more power to him.
Yeah, and this is someone that, while he has been pro Bitcoin right now, I know he tweeted the Bitcoin white paper on October 31st, or the day that it was released back in 2008. But even he's been very critical of it, especially in the last 2 years, in 2020 and 2021, about some of the lack of the privacy aspects. Obviously, there are ways to use Bitcoin more privately, but it is not intuitive or as intuitive. I hope that we push to get that more intuitive and easier to do. So easy that your grandmother can use Bitcoin privacy, but that will take a little bit of time. Getting into the last story, talking about privacy, right before we bring on Stella Assange, we're looking to have her on. But the privacy-enhancing crypto coins could be banned under leaked EU plans. Crypto providers could be forbidden from touching the likes of Monero or Dash under the proposed government amendments to anti-money laundering rules. After reading through this proposal, I didn't have a chance to see, or nothing in there suggested that they were going after CoinJoins, but I think it's only a matter of time. Obviously, they went after Tornado Cash, or at least the U.S. Treasury Department went after Tornado Cash. And in the likes of doing it, now they're going after privacy-focused coins, but it's only a matter of time, I think, before they go after CoinJoins or, just things of that nature that are more enhancing to privacy-focused things. Pete, anything else you want to add there?
No, I think you nailed it. Yeah, they're coming for us. We need to rally, stay focused, use the tools that are available to us on Bitcoin to preserve privacy, explore non-KYC options, because it's only going to get tougher from here. On that note, I want to remind everybody that Bitcoin 2023 is just around the corner. You can use code BMLive to save 10% off of your ticket. Bitcoin 2022 was absolutely incredible. Bitcoin 2023 is going to be even more so, even as we slog through this bear market. You do not want to miss it. The print mag is also available. You can use the code BMLive to save 10% on that. We're about to come out with our Orange Party issue. You do not want to miss that either. We'll be back in just a minute with Stella Assange to talk about privacy. Welcome back. We are here. Oh, you there? Stella, can you hear us? Oh, you're cutting in and out. But I will start by saying, wanted to welcome everybody back to Bitcoin Magazine Live. We're here with Stella Assange, wife of Julian Assange. We're going to be going through and talking about privacy, the history of the situation that Julian is in, and everything related to those topics. We're working out some technical difficulties right now, and we will be pulling her in as soon as we get those locked in and figured out.
Yeah, I'm Messenger now to make sure that her settings are all good. So, P, if you want to entertain us real quick while I fix this.
Yeah, absolutely, man. For those of you that don't know the history of Julian Assange, it is a fascinating one. As of April 2019, he has been kept in a high security prison, extremely unfairly. And he's a pioneer in the free speech space. He obviously is most well known for WikiLeaks and for championing systems that allowed sources to stay anonymous and safely share data with reporters that they couldn't otherwise share because they were afraid of reprisals. So, previously, sources of information for news reporters were using things like email, which is, of course, extremely trackable. And Assange created systems that used Dropbox and VPN systems to allow them to protect their privacy. Stella recently was a speaker at Bitcoin Amsterdam and gave an incredible talk, which we're going to be talking about in just a minute, really going through sort of what happened, the history of the situation, and why it's so important now more than ever. Chris, is there anything that you would add to the that very, very brief story that I just told?
No, I think that's right. Stella, can you hear us now? We can hear you. I don't know if you can hear us.
Okay, great. Yes, I can hear you.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Excellent.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'd love to sort of have this conversation. I just mentioned that you were on you spoke at Bitcoin Amsterdam, and it was an incredibly powerful and moving talk. I think the best way to approach this, and I'm open to your own thoughts if you'd like to suggest something differently, but is really starting with, who Julian Assange is, what he has. Oh, I think we may have just lost you. You still hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay. Let's dive in with who Julian Assange is, what he accomplished, why the work that he was doing was so important, and then let's shift over to what has happened since the creation of WikiLeaks, and then what we can do towards the end of the conversation to potentially help in this situation. So maybe if you can tell us, for the audience who has never heard of Julian Assange, who he is, what he's accomplished, and why it was so important, why it is so important in the modern age.
Well, Julian is the most consequential journalist and publisher of our times, but I'd go further to say that he is the most consequential cypherpunk alongside Satoshi, because what he did was apply his knowledge of cryptography to journalism, and I see a lot of parallels between what Bitcoin technology has achieved and sought to achieve, and what Julian has achieved through WikiLeaks in relation to journalism. But there's a lot to unpack there. Maybe a bit of a backgrounder is what you're actually asking for. Julian was a computer programmer in his 20s. He was a computer security specialist, a cryptographer. And then he decided to branch out into journalism. And he saw a real need for original source documents to be available. In a way, he can be seen as an archivist or a librarian. But the type of library that WikiLeaks holds is the most persecuted documents, the most suppressed documents that exist, the ones that states have tried to suppress at all costs. And it follows, therefore, that the the information that is most suppressed is the information that is of the highest public interest. The WikiLeaks model, which was pioneered by Julian, came at a time when, in the early 2000s, there was a lot of sincere efforts, I think, through civil society and also governments to have a sort of open government. It's something that isn't talked about anymore. But at the time, I was just starting university, and this was very, these were the buzzwords: open government, transparency, and so on. And so there were a number of different initiatives to try to open up governments, to have access to government information that was acknowledgedly public, that the state held on us and that we should have access to. And it was kind of a very basic kind of accountability exercise. But what Julian and WikiLeaks did that had the enormous added value, which made all the difference and which transformed journalism, was to introduce an anonymous Dropbox through which the sources could supply information to journalists with guaranteed anonymity, and through Tor, through various mechanisms that only a security expert and a cryptographer could come up with in order to solve the problem of source protection at a time when journalists were just using emails and had no idea about computer security, had no idea about how emails and the internet works in general. And here came Julian with this idea of maximizing transparency. He's not a transparency absolutist, but he does believe in maximal transparency. And the quality of the WikiLeaks submission system, which was basically a Dropbox, in the past it was the brown envelope that just got dropped in front of the journalist's office in the middle of the night. So the equivalent of this is the WikiLeaks Dropbox that had an anonymizing feature through which sources could supply original source documents that had been suppressed, that had been censored, to journalists through WikiLeaks. And so WikiLeaks is a portal to suppressed documents. And so almost immediately, Julian and WikiLeaks started making huge advancements in journalism, basically because of the quality of the submissions that WikiLeaks was getting. WikiLeaks started in 2006. By 2008, WikiLeaks had won the Amnesty New Media Award, the Economist Prize, etc.
Stella, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. It seems like there's maybe a loose cable. There's sort of static coming through on your microphone. We can understand you, but it's a little hard.
Yeah.
Can you try connecting? Also, your camera just cut out. Hopefully we can get you back. Give us a moment. Apologies for the technical difficulties, everybody. All right, how's that? Stella, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can. There's still a little bit of a buzz, but we can power through it. Let's just keep going.
I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. Let's just keep going. We can understand you clear. This is super interesting. Please continue. You were saying that WikiLeaks was founded, I think you said in 2006. Where do we go from there? Okay,
so almost immediately, WikiLeaks started getting some really high quality submissions. And for example, about the Kenyan elections in 2008, I think, that changed the outcome of the elections. It was about corruption in Kenya and about extrajudicial killings in Kenya. But the biggest kind of, and lots of environmental leaks and leaks about corruption in Peru, in East Timor, about China. So WikiLeaks has been banned in China since about 2009, I think, and also US leaks. And of course, it's the US leaks that have had the largest impact. In 2010, WikiLeaks started publishing leaks that came from a source in the US military, a US military analyst, Chelsea Manning. And those leaks were about the Iraq War and the Afghan War, and about the torture prison in Guantanamo Bay, and also State Department cables from all over the world, from every single country in the world. And perhaps the most famous WikiLeaks publication from Chelsea Manning is a video called Collateral Murder. And anyone who hasn't seen it, please watch it, because when you see Collateral Murder, you actually understand what WikiLeaks is about and why the US government wants to put Julian in prison. That video is a video of an Apache helicopter, US military, flying over Baghdad. It's actually the video of the viewfinder from the helicopter as it circles around a group of civilians in Baghdad and then shoots them in pieces. And then a van, after a while, pulls up, sees one of the people who were severely injured. It was actually a Reuters journalist, a photographer, who was crawling, trying to seek shelter from this helicopter that he couldn't see, because these helicopters, they're you can't even see them, they're so far up. And this van pulled up, and the man who came out was actually a father who was taking his kids to school, and the kids were also in the van. And he went out, and then he picked up this man who was severely injured from the sidewalk and took him into the van. And then the helicopter opens fire on the van. And that is a very clear war crime when you kill the open fire against the rescuers. And everyone died except for the two kids, who were something like 5 and 8. And the only reason they survived was because the father shielded them with his own body, and shielded them so they didn't die, but they still got severely injured. So this video was actually the big, probably the single publication of Chelsea Manning, of the Chelsea Manning leaks, that was had the most impact. People can still remember, who were around that time. They know Collateral Murder, and it changed the discussion, changed the perspective on the Iraq War completely. Just like that picture, the famous picture of the girl in the Vietnam War who's running down a road, and she's running away from a napalm attack on her village. That picture is kind of representative of the Vietnam War. Collateral Murder, the video, is the representation of the Iraq War. So that was 2010, and Julian was arrested in December 2010. Now he was arrested under a different pretext, but basically the US investigation and the political persecution started then, and the pretext was in relation to an investigation that had been opened in Sweden, a completely absurd investigation, which was, he was never charged, but still they tried to extradite him, and he spent 10 days in prison, a year and a half under house arrest. They, no charge whatsoever. Then he went into the Ecuadorian embassy, because he said, rightly, that this was a ruse to get him into prison so that the US could extradite him. And then the Sweden eventually just closed the entire investigation, and but only after the US had revealed that it had charged Julian under the so-called Espionage Act. And he's charged under the Espionage Act. He's the first publisher to ever be charged under the Espionage Act. And he's charged for journalistic activities, for receiving and possessing and communicating to the public information that was in the public interest. There's no allegation that he was a spy for a different country or anything like that. What is described as criminal is the journalistic activity that I just described, and it's in relation to the very publications that I just talked about: Chelsea Manning, Iraq, Afghanistan, Guantanamo Bay, diplomatic cables, and collateral murder.
Wow. So what year is that at this point in the story?
So he gets charged during the Trump administration. This is very interesting because the Obama administration, actually, they arrested Chelsea Manning in 2010, April 2010. And Chelsea Manning was arrested because she had basically confessed to someone who was working or represented himself as working as a journalist, and claimed to offer her source protection, but really it was he was deceiving her. His name was Adrian Lamo, and he was working with Wired magazine. And so he then went with her confession to the FBI, and she was arrested shortly after. She was court-martialed, and in 2013 she was convicted to 35 years. And it was right after that court-martial and the conviction that the Obama administration's Department of Justice made a statement that they were not going to prosecute Julian for the Manning leaks. And the reasons they gave were that Julian was not a hacker, and that there was no way, having looked at the evidence, having gone through the whole court-martial with the source of this material, there was no way they could find to prosecute Julian and WikiLeaks.
Oh no, I think we lost you.
Yeah, it looks like we did. We lost your connection real quick.
All right, hopefully she'll be back in just a moment. But I think that one of the reasons that this story is so important is there are so many aspects of this that relate back to why Bitcoin is so important, separate from the fact that freedom of information, freedom from the tyranny of information is a critical component of so many of the ideas behind Bitcoin. There are a lot of aspects of this that are even more specifically related to Bitcoin. One of them is, of course, with early on in the WikiLeaks saga, WikiLeaks had been receiving a lot of the absolutely necessary financial support through systems like, PayPal and Visa and MasterCard. And basically overnight, all of those systems just killed those their accounts and was preventing people from being able to support WikiLeaks, which was doing incredibly important work, as Stella was just telling us. And Bitcoin became a way for them to accept donations. And previous to that, about 97% of the site's revenue came through those traditional financial systems. But Bitcoin was able to, as an option, was able to help, circumvent those strictures. I think that, one of the things that Stella mentioned in her talk at Bitcoin Amsterdam, which we'll post in the chat at some point, and I would highly encourage everyone to go watch, is this idea that something that Julian said to her, apparently, which is that Bitcoin has the power to break Orwell's dictum. And Orwell's dictum is that he who controls the present controls the past, and he who controls the past controls the future. And so this is something that was really important to Julian Assange as someone who identified with the ideas of the cypherpunk ethos, that is. And so that was something that really stuck with me personally. And I think that is, it's something that we are experiencing more and more today as we go through this hyperinflationary environment. But Chris, I'm curious what your thoughts are on what we've heard so far on the situation, on Julian Assange overall.
Yeah, no, it's a fascinating story for sure. I think it's very interesting. It looks like we just got Stella back, so hopefully we can get her in here real quick.
Okay.
Stella, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yes.
Amazing.
Okay.
I was just, go ahead, Chris.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, B.
I was just saying that one of the things that you said in your talk about Bitcoin Amsterdam that really stuck with me was something that Julian had said to you, which is that Bitcoin has the potential to break Orwell's dictum. The idea that he controls the present, controls the past, and he who controls the past controls the future. So we were just kind of talking about that. But please continue, though.
Yeah, so basically Julian is a political prisoner. Depending on who sits in the White House, he gets prosecuted or he doesn't get prosecuted. And the thing is that they have gone after him as a publisher. They have gone after him for journalistic activity, for receiving information from the source. There's no allegation that he's actually a whistleblower. He is the publisher. The source was Chelsea Manning. So basically they've constructed a conspiracy between source and publisher, which is, once you do that, it's very easy to just argue that about any journalist, and especially journalists who engage in very serious journalism, national security journalism. And the United States is the country with the strongest press protection in the world, at least legally, constitutionally speaking. And with this case, they have really just completely crippled the First Amendment. And it has an incredible knockdown effect on the rest of the press, on freedom of speech, and so on. And, Julian has had quite a, let's say, bitter relationship with some of the legacy media, the New York Times and so on. But even the New York Times and the Washington Post have qualified this prosecution as a threat to the First Amendment, a very dangerous threat to the First Amendment. So that's where we are. And Julian has been fighting this prosecution for the past 3.5 years in the British courts. And the thing is, some people say, well, he should just go to the US and then fight it there. But he faces 175 years sentence. And it's he's already been in prison for 3.5 years, and he's in a high security prison in London. I saw him this morning. I see him about once or twice a week. And in the United States, he would be in solitary confinement. In the United States, on any given day, you have about 80,000 people in some form of solitary confinement. And I have no doubt, and all these, experts on U.S. prison conditions and on national security cases are all in agreement that Julian will be placed in isolation.
Wow.
And he has not been free. He has not been a free man since the 7th of December 2010, which is when he was first arrested. And it was exactly 7 days after WikiLeaks started publishing the diplomatic cables, and it was 5 days after Bank of America, PayPal, Visa, MasterCard, and so on blocked donations to WikiLeaks. And is this banking blockade, which really kind of set the scene for the persecution against him, that they were going to use full economic, political, reputational, all types of attacks on him in order to silence him, in order to censor what WikiLeaks was publishing.
Yeah, I think. Oh, I'm hearing a weird echo. You guys hearing that, Chris? All right. I'll try to be brief because you were coming in clear, Stella. So when you dropped it off a second ago, we were talking about the kind of extraordinary measures that were being used to try to attack Julian. And, you mentioned the financial one. I think there's also the political attacks, obviously financial, legal attacks. Can you elaborate a little bit more on some of those and the challenges that you guys face or you guys faced in those moments?
Sure. I mean, I think that the banking blockade...
The audio is super distorted. I wonder if you can you try turning off your camera? Maybe that will increase bandwidth, and then we can just, let's see.
Is this
Okay, can you?
better?
Oh no, it's still buzzing. Keep going. We'll see if it improves.
Sorry.
Oh no, that's perfect. Now you sound.
So the banking blockade, I think, is very interesting. It was the first time that this happened, and it was immediately after WikiLeaks started publishing these diplomatic cables, 250,000 cables from embassies to the State Department, and from the State Department, and basically the U.S.
Congress and so on.
Our specific congressmen were.
Stella,
trying
I'm
to
so
find
sorry. I'm so sorry. We can't hear you. It keeps cutting in and out. Maybe let's try a couple more times. If there's a way, if you can try exiting and then rejoining, we'll try again. For those of you who are just joining, we're having an amazing conversation with Stella Assange, wife of Julian Assange, about the persecution that Julian has undergone, the importance of Bitcoin in that space, and we were hoping to get to sort of what we can do as Bitcoiners to support freedom of speech, because the work that Julian is doing and the situation that he faces is kind of just the beginning for freedom of speech, which is so important in this modern age. Chris, while we wait for hopefully Stella to be able to rejoin us, what are your thoughts so far on what we've been talking about?
It's pretty incredible. I've kind of know the story of Julian Assange, but in bits and pieces. I kind of knew of the Chelsea Manning talk and all of that, but it's really eye-opening to see like how long he has not been a free man. I mean, almost 12 years now. It come December 7th, I think is what she said, of 2010. It's incredible. It's scary. And I know tying back to Bitcoin, I know obviously on the Bitcoin Talk forum, people were suggesting that Bitcoin be used for exactly WikiLeaks' case. And Satoshi kind of freaked out. He's like, I don't think it's ready. I don't think it can handle a nation level attack or, a nation state attack. I think he's right at that time. I think now it's a more robust system that can, or at least that's what we're going up against. But there's actually some breaking news that I wanted to say. So there's the Ukraine-Russia conflict. It seems that it's not confirmed yet, but it seems a missile was hit very near Poland, maybe struck the Polish border. If that's the case, as of right now, the Polish premier calls for an urgent meeting of national security amongst NATO. So if that missile actually did hit in Poland, still waiting for confirmation, but a couple of people threw it in the chat. I hate to say this, but a world war could break out. I want to wait to confirm of these things, but it appears that way.
Holy shit. Wait, sorry. That's breaking?
Yeah.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, so as of about an hour ago, a missile was launched from the Russian border, and it was obviously intended for Ukraine, but it looks like it potentially could have hit Poland, or at least that's what seems to be being reported. If that's the case, the Polish premier about an hour ago calls for an urgent meeting of the National Security Committee of Poland. Obviously, if that missile did indeed hit Poland, that potentially drags NATO nations into a war against Russia. Like I said, this is kind of all, we're live, so it's hard to fact check this right now, but a lot of people are saying it's all over mainstream media and such. So I appreciate the chat. We really see what you guys are saying here.
And I also want to say thank you for bearing with us. I know the audio was really intense. It was like nails on a chalkboard at some points. We feel like the story is so important around what Julian Assange has been struggling with that we wanted to try to make it work. So thanks for bearing with us. Hopefully we'll be able to reschedule and have Stella join us and talk more about this at a time when, there's better internet available.
I want to caveat this. I'm not on the ground there, so it is very hard to confirm these things. I hope that, I hate to say, I hope this is not like a psyop to get us into another war. I know many people have said, why do we go to the Korean War? Why do we go to the Vietnam War? Why do we go to Iraq and Afghanistan? So I really hope that's not the case. I hate to put the tinfoil hat on, but it is a little coincidental that the midterms are just wrapping up now. And it's like, okay, let's ramp up this war effort. I don't know. It's very hard to confirm. And you hate to see that it did seem like the Ukraine and US side were kind of opting for a war while Putin was trying to negotiate or go to the table before something like this happens. Obviously war is a heinous act, and you send there was a great quote, like I said, from the Call of Duty games when I used to play them when I was younger, and it was, old men declare war for young men to go off and die for it. So I really wish Ukraine, Poland, and Russian citizens, safe, and hopefully this can conclude quickly.
I agree. It does seem it's not like the U.S. has the ability to manufacture war on that scale necessarily, but it does seem very interesting that this is happening right leading into midterms.
Where do you want to go from here? Do you just kind of want to?
Yeah. I'm curious. I have an urge to go and read up on this. Maybe we'll open a space to discuss this, the Ukraine-Russia conflict as it is developing. I want to encourage everyone to go and watch the talk, as I said, that Stella Assange gave at Bitcoin Amsterdam. We'll put it in the show notes. We'll post it in the chat. It's really powerful stuff. And I think that, I think a lot of us identify as, cypherpunks. We understand the importance of privacy, but to really see this play out in such an unfair way for someone that was just trying to bring information that other people were bringing to them to light, critical information about war crimes, as Stella said, and to have the apparatus of, the United States government, which, as she said, is historically one of the places with the best protections for freedom of speech in the world, to see that just turned against them is really chilling. And it makes me wonder kind of what, if you were a journalist or publication or publisher, as Julian, was, and you see these kinds of actions happening, it has a profound chilling effect on your willingness to publish this type of information, to take these risks. And that's the most damaging thing about these situations, because there's so much information that we need to know as people that we deserve to know. But when governments, try to hide behind, claims of treason or espionage, we are the ones that suffer. So privacy and cryptography have never been more important than they are now. Please, as individuals, understand how to use those tools, not only for your financial freedoms, but also for your freedom of communication. And, we can hopefully navigate these trying times together. But on that note, let's call it a show, and we will be back tomorrow with more news and notes and an interview with another amazing guest. Chris, gonna play us out?
Yep, that sounds good. Thanks, everyone. Catch you later.
Thanks so much.